Welcome to another episode of Lifelong Learner. This is the Out of Class edition with Ben, Janesh, and Matt. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Lifelong Learner Out of Class. I'm joined by Dr. Ben and Matt. How are we doing?
I would prefer Mr. Ind.
Mr.
Please,
Ind.
thank you. From
Mr.
now on, and I have my introduction.
Great.
If it follows Dr. Kavosa, then it needs to be Mr. Ind. Or if you can introduce me first, that'd be better.
Great.
Mate, what did you have to do to actually earn the Mister, though? I actually did something to earn the DR.
Yeah, no, I just born.
Born that way.
Yeah.
It's like that song.
I'm enough.
What's that called? That's called is that a pronoun?
Oh, mate, I don't
You
know.
know there's that whole thing about
Nah, the pronouns like him, her, him, his, he, and then
They.
yeah,
They is a
it's like
pronoun too.
the pronoun is like kind of what you identify as.
yeah.
Yeah, but the Mister, like, you got to do something for your like prequel.
Yeah.
Oh, anything other than Mr. Master and Mister, you, as a young man, you get for free. True?
Right. True.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's how that works.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of.
I think we need to update our usernames just on there and just make them a little bit more accurate.
Oh, here we go. Does Ben have the ability to edit mine, Janesh? I hope not.
No, he doesn't. He
Oh,
doesn't.
that's good. That's really
That's
good.
much better. Oh, that's much better.
How many years was it, just out of curiosity, to get your doctor?
DR. 5 years,
Yeah.
mate. 5 years for a DR.
5 years.
Yep. Yep.
When-
Worth it, mate. It was worth every toga party.
Yeah, they say work hard, play hard. I imagine that would have been the
Mate,
case.
that's back in the day too. That's back in the day when you went to uni too.
Yeah, right. When there was a thing called O Week, right? O Week. Actually, even when things are.
What year
back-
was this?
Mate, this was 35 years ago.
35 years ago. So
I
that's...
don't look old enough. Yeah.
No, you don't. Yeah, I don't know how you do it. But what's that?
He's got the Zoom touch-up feature. That's how he does it.
2010? 2010?
No.
No. Sorry. 90,
So it was like-
99. 90.
Shit, 30
Yeah.
years
So
ago.
90
Fellas, 91.
94, I think it was.
94. Where were you, Janesh? 94.
Right, I was in Dandenong in 94. What was I doing? I was in primary school. Primary school back then. Right?
Young whippersnapper. And Ben was getting drunk. I mean, studying.
Yeah.
Getting his DR. Getting the DR. Getting the DR.
You know, it's amazing. You know, interesting conversation maybe. It's amazing how far apart you are when you're in, grade 6 versus year 12. Right? There's 6 years and there's an amazing, ridiculous difference between those two things. And then when you get to be maybe, 26 and 32, there's a bit of a difference. But by the time you're, let's say, 46 and 52, there's really no difference. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like the separation that we have when we're so young in our abilities and our knowledge and our wisdom is so great. Yet, of course, as we continue to move through, that gets less and less.
And there's another range of like school leaver, like 18 to 26 as well, right? That won't really kind of necessarily mingle all the time with, say, a 30-year-old. Curious, why do you think that is? That as we get older, the gap doesn't really matter anymore.
I'm going to chime in on that. I think that think about school. You have clear boundaries between each year, clear segregation. Year 7, year 8, year 9. Once you leave school or university, everyone's in the same pool. We're all swimming in the same sea. So some of the things that we come across are similar. Life's similar, whether you're 26 or 35. Maybe. What do you think?
I think it's that, and I think one of the things that happens too that once you hit 16, 17, 18, you do start to transition into actually being an adult, not just physically looking like an adult, but there's actually a choice to mentally start becoming an adult. Now, some people don't make that transition. Sadly, they miss that bit, and so now we've got 25 and 30 and 35 and maybe even 40-year-olds that still haven't reached adulthood mentally, and so you can have two 40-year-olds, and there's a big divide between them. But for most of us, we transition from this adolescence into actually being a real adult, and that's about taking responsibility and all those things that you guys know about. So I think that's where that separation gets a little less. And I think, as you or Janesh was just saying, that we're actually out in the real world. I look at Logan, who last year was 17 and at high school, versus this year he's 18 and he's out in the real world. He's been hanging out with the guys at the summit. He's just started his business again, and he's like the growth on a daily basis from having to swim in the adult pool is shifting him daily. He's less and less a kid, and the separation between he and I is getting less and less. So interesting. I think you're right. Swimming with other adults.
I would say sometimes when you're doing like a sport or learning something, like if you learn with people better than you learn quicker, right? As opposed to even on par, even though it's a little uncomfortable when you go, if you're on a run group or cycle group, for example, and they're like fast, you're like, I'm just got to hang on. But you innately you get better quicker than if you were with people at your own pace, which is really interesting.
Yeah, you don't want to be the best person in the room. You want to be the weakest, if anything, because then you've got so much room to grow and evolve. I know that that's been the case for surfing for me. I've always been the weakest one in the water, but it does mean that you learn the most, because everywhere you look, you've got something you can learn. What do you, just while we're talking about age, before we move on, what do you remember a time where I remember when I was 17, 18, I thought I knew everything. I had it dialed in. And then around about 25, there was this shift of, now I realize that I know nothing. And that was interestingly when I started to learn more. Do you remember having this moment where you were like, whoa, when you looked back, how ignorant maybe you were? Do you either of you guys had that sort of moment where you've realised, wow?
No. Mate, I wonder whether it's an age.
Great timing. This is brilliant.
I wonder whether it's an age thing or whether it's a defining moment thing. There's a defining moment where you go, oh, shit, I actually don't know. I actually don't know anything. And I reckon for me, there was, I would say this, I was omnipotent. Like I was a machine. I was indestructible. I was a force to be reckoned with. The world spun around me for years until I got to, and I'm terrible with dates, but until I fell out of the palm tree and smashed my foot up. And I realised, in fact, I remember smashing my foot and thinking as I was in the ambulance in Fiji heading towards the hospital. There's a whole story.
I thought that was a metaphor. No, you literally fell out of a palm tree and smashed your foot.
Oh, yeah. I literally was in Fiji. I said, Michelle, take this picture of me. It's great. The sun was setting in the distance. It's one of those palm trees that hangs out over the water, over the beach and then over the water.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
I'm climbing to the end of the palm tree to get this photo with the sun in the behind and the water and the palm tree. And palm trees survive hurricanes because they're super flexible, right?
Yeah.
They move a lot, right? So as I'm getting towards the end, the thing's just like, whoa, it's moving all over. And I look down and it's about 3 meters down to some water and sand. And I think, I've seen the movies, right? People jump from heights. It'll be cool. And there's a bit of water and sand. It'll be all right. So I think I'm better having a controlled fall than like falling on my head. So I drop out of this at the end of this palm tree, down through the water, through the bit of sand, which was like an inch deep, and then onto a huge flat rock that was sitting under the sand. And both my heels hit. I thought, whoa, and I'm laying in the water thinking, those heels are really, they're sore. And Michelle's yelling out, told you not to climb the tree. What have you done? You've injured yourself? And I said, no, I'm good. I'm good. And I'm pulling myself along in this shallow water, waiting for the the pain in my heels to disappear, and the pain disappeared out of my right heel, and the pain in my left heel didn't disappear.
Oh dear!
And I just went, oh, that's broken. That's broken. So anyway, trip to hospital, which was like, you see the scenes out of like a World War I movie where they've got the bodies coming in, and they lift the injured guy onto the bed that's got blood from the previous guy. Like, it was like that, right? So first of all, these Fijians lift me into a van. They take me to the hospital in a van, laying on the back of the van. And I arrive, and there's just, it's crazy. I needed to go to the loo, so they took me to the loo, and it was like just a hole in the ground in the hospital. And anyway, I said, look, I think it's broken. And they said, oh, I think it's okay. I said, no, I'm pretty sure it's broken. And they said, well, we haven't got a radiographer. I said, well, can you get one? Because they had an X-ray unit there. They said, oh, she's off, and she lives an hour away, and it's hard for her to get here. And I said, well, I'll just pay. I'll get a taxi and I'll pay for her to come. So they said, okay. So I paid for a taxi to go and pick her up and bring her back. She comes back, she takes the X-ray. She goes, no, I think it's okay. And I said, there is no heel there. The heel has disappeared because my heel, that big calcaneal bone at the back, had just imploded on itself. Called an eggshell fracture. So it had completely disappeared. And so they put me in another van and put an ambulance sticker on the side of the van, right? And I'm in the back, and we're heading to the other hospital. And the nurse that they put in the van with me, she goes, "Oh, Mr. Ben, it's a bit cold tonight. Would it be okay if we just stopped on the way for me to go and get a cardigan?" I went, "Yeah, oh, yeah, no dramas. Yeah, it's all good." So
did you correct her? It's Dr. Ben, and yes, you can get your cardigan.
No, she called me Mr. Ben. They always call you Mr. and your first name. So Mr. Ben. So I said, yeah, great. So we pull over, and it's just nothing. It's crickets, and it's dark, and there's some Fijian dude driving the van. The nurse goes out, and she disappears. She's gone for an hour. I'm just on the side of the road for an hour while she's trekked through the jungle to get her cardigan and trek back to the van. Anyway, she comes back, and we head off to the main hospital, and the rest. There's a whole other story there, but it's still at that point. I said to myself, you know what? This is cool. I broke my foot. I'll get it fixed, and I'll have 3 months off. Literally, I'll have a break. I haven't had a long break for a while. This will be great. I'm in control.
Took a break.
It's all good. Have a break, right? And so, anyway, I got home. I had the foot reconstructed, wandered around for 12 weeks in my dressing gown, Hugh Hefner, built some model aeroplanes, read some books, living the dream. And at the end of 12 weeks, we were due to take the cast off. And I remember going to the podiatry surgeon that did the work, and I'm just thinking, I'll get the cast off. I'm good. I'm back into it. That's great. It's been a good break. I'm going to take the cast off. They take the cast off, and the foot's manky. It's got no function in it because it's been seized up. When I'd smashed the foot, I'd torn through all the joints, fractured through the joint lines, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk. And I remember that night, we drove up to a friend's place to stay, back when you could visit friends, and out of regional. And, mate, I just sobbed. I couldn't believe it. And it was that moment that I realised that I wasn't omnipotent, that I wasn't in control of everything that was going on. And it was a real shock, like a real shock. And from that moment onwards, in fact, it was almost like the power had been completely turned off, not dimmed down. It was completely turned off. And we stayed there a couple of nights, and I remember driving back. It was up at Wangaratta, and we're driving back towards Gippsland. And I said to Michelle, "Don't go home. I can't go home. It's like, just keep driving, because I can't. I don't want to settle and realise just how messed up my life is, right? How terrible it is, because I'm no longer in control." And so from that point onwards, pretty much I just kept going down and down and down until I was doing depression very well. very well. I would stay in bed. I remember one day I went into the team and said, "Team, you're just going to have to take over the business. You know, I'm out. I can't participate." I had a walking stick. You know, that was a huge knock to walk around with a walking stick, like to see myself in the mirror as I walked past the shop and see myself with a walking stick. I remember one day I was driving to work and I looked at a power pole next to the BP service station in Maui. And for about 5 seconds as I drove towards it, I thought about veering off and smashing the car into the pole. So, mate, that was my defining moment. You know, that fall out of the palm tree. Up to that point, I knew it all. I don't know whether it's age. I wonder whether it's a defining moment that happens at some point, and sometimes that is when we're a bit younger. What about you, Janesh? Let's lift it because that went down.
Well, before
that got heavy.
No, but I do want to ask you 2 questions before I give you my response. One, what was the starting point of pulling you out of that state?
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. So that lasted till the end of the year.
What was the instigator to, and obviously there was probably multiple things that kind of compounded to pull you out, but what was first gear, so to speak, to start that ball?
There were 2 things. And I can remember Michelle saying to me, she said, "Why are you so unhappy? You know, you've got a beautiful family, you've got a great practice, we're still making money, you live in an amazing home." And I said, I don't know. I'm just unhappy. I can't see happiness. I can't see any light. Anyway, so towards the end of the year, 2 things happened almost within the same week. I caught up with a chiropractic group of chiros. It was an end of year kind of celebration. I caught up with a group of chiros and there was a neurological chiro there. And I was talking to him about it and he said, "Mate, it's just neurological. We need to get your nerve system rewired again. You know, when you've had chronic pain for a long time, it can set up a real weird pattern in your conscious." He said, "So we need to get you rewired. Let me give you some neurological exercises to do that I think will help." So I started those that week after we left that party. And literally the same week, a mate of mine called me and said, "Hey, Benny, we're building a medical clinic. Are you interested in partnering up with us to build a radiology clinic?" And my creative, which is my normal operating mode, it just turned on, right? And I kind of reconnected with some of my core values around creation and making an impact. And those 2 things came together. And so I built a radiology company over the next 7 years, did my exercises, and within probably 2 to 3 weeks, the lights started to come back on, like quickly. It's like someone just turned the dial and it's just like the lights came back on again. I was reconnected with purpose. I had a mission, and I was off. And it hasn't been a smooth ride. There's been plenty of ups and downs in the years that followed that. When I get challenged about my ability to control my world, you know, when a challenge comes in, I go, "Oh, I thought I was in control again." So there's been ongoing challenge, but that was a moment. I rewired my neurology and I got connected with something. I had a sense of purpose again.
Yeah, mate. And the other question is, mate, how was the photo?
What photo?
Did Michelle actually take the photo?
Oh, she didn't get the photo. She did get a photo of me getting loaded. She did get a photo of me getting loaded into the van and carried up the beach with the Fijians. We did get some photos of the. It was funny. There was a picture that we took. I remember, mate, because I make the lighter stuff, right? And I'm laying on this bloody bed, and there's this picture of this ankle, this big blown up ankle on the wall, right? It's a warning saying, you know, beware of some kind of worm that the mosquito can transmit. That when it bites you, the worm kind of gets in, and you know, and it makes you all distorted. Well, there's this picture of this huge bloated ankle, and I'm looking at that, and I'm looking down at my ankle, and my ankle's all bloated, and so we've got a picture of that on the wall. So you've got a picture of me being loaded in the ambulance with the sticker.
All that for the gram, and Instagram didn't even exist back then, mate.
Mate, this was
MySpace.
This was
Ask
this
Jeeves.
was on a real camera. This was on a real camera.
Mate, I have to ask. As Michelle must have held this story for a long, long time. There must just be now this ingrained, when you're doing something Michelle doesn't agree with, she's like,
Don't climb the tree.
remember the palm tree, Ben.
Mate.
This is a palm tree. Does that happen?
Her mantra is it's something like, it's you always injure yourself. What's going to be your injury this holiday? Because I do tend to, I love adventure, right? So I'm always out exploring, and I'm often, I love my early mornings getting out and about, and I'll often come back. She's just getting out of bed, and I'll be hobbling in, or I'll be, holding my arm. What have you done this morning? Oh, I fell off the bike. Whatever. So the story has lasted. Ben is always injuring himself.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's really funny. I'm in the similar category. Matt is always injuring himself. I wonder what happens when the three of us hang out. Which one of us is the one that gets the injuries? I'm hoping it's you, mate. Maybe you'll spare me.
Must be Janesh's turn.
Yeah.
Mate, speaking of turn, what about you? Do you remember when you realised that you weren't omnipotent?
Yeah, probably two moments, I think. I think one was a defining moment, and the other one was kind of time. I think it reminded me. The second time was like, it reminded me of a defining moment. So I'm not. I think you two do know. So when I was 14, I lost my brother in a car accident, and coincidentally enough, it's actually tomorrow. So we're recording today on the 29th, so tomorrow would be 20 years actually.
Wow.
Yeah. Since he passed away, and that was like you grow up really quick in a family of two boys, now one boy, and you go, whoa, how do you be a rock for your parents? And then that put things in perspective, and then that probably changed like high school for a little bit, but not really, because then you kind of go back into the norm, right? And then it was probably after uni, spending 4 years doing a banking and finance degree, going and working at a bank, and then going, I'm going to go travel, and then realizing nothing's guaranteed. Right, and then kind of pulled me back to that defining moment, like kind of when my brother passed away, and gone, tomorrow's might not be there. So why chase the money? Was my original kind of thinking of. I think going into banking and finance earlier on, straight out of high school, I was like, the earning potential is great, right? Sure, and then I go, there's a little bit more to it. And that was probably hold on, let's explore what is there. How do you have both? How do you have super amounts of joy, and have either enough or still have the money that you need, not that you want, right? I think you need and want are two different things, and kind of really early on going, I want $1 million, but I don't need $1 million. And don't get me wrong, I do like my toys, and I'm like, but I don't, but I want a lot more than I need. And, but it's just that those two moments were probably like, let's explore, and probably started some of the going down the rabbit hole of a bunch of things and thinking outside the box. And I think when I came back to Australia after that trip, I changed it. I changed everything. I think I remember when I came back, I'm like, I'm going to buy a sports car. Had no money at all. Just overseas. I'm going to find a way. And it was like, I got back in like September. In like end of December, I'd sold the car that I had for like $3,000. Kept borrowing mum and dad's car, and then was like just before New Year's, I remember, bought like an Audi A4, like twin turbo, blacked out. Like it was epic. It was so good. And then didn't go back to the bank. Signed applied for a Masters of Education, got in, and then I was like, all right, we're gonna go back and crush another year of uni. When I'm like, yes, I got out of uni. Now I'm like, oh, I'm going back to uni. And yeah, try and change like trajectory, right? So that was kind of the moment where I go, let's have it all. Let's have the lifestyle, have the what you're doing for work on a day-to-day basis be super enjoyable. But yeah, both of them compounded. I think when I look at things, yeah,
it's cool. That's an interesting thing to, and I don't know whether you guys have done that, but I've done that recently while I was away on holiday, which is to have a look at how much do you really need? Like actually get a number. Like what is the number? What is the number for, first of all, to get by? How much do you actually need to get by? To put food on the table and pay the bills, and then how much do you need to put food on the table, pay the bills, and do the other stuff that you want to do? Like car every few years, have some holidays every year. I mean, how much do you really need when you do the math? It's a super interesting exercise. And then, of course, at my age, 52, going on 53 this year, in 2 weeks, put it in your diary, boys, 14th of October.
Parties at your house?
Presents fine. Just send them express post so they arrive in time. Party. Oh, mate, I'm Metro.
But party, is that are you giving us a history lesson, Matt? Is that history? What is a party?
Yeah, what's a party?
Is it history?
It's a thing that you do. You all come together on Zoom and you hang out.
Or is it a PR? Yeah. Is it a PR stunt? Because if you have a party, you're definitely going to get in the news, right? You definitely, if you can't afford a marketing budget, have everyone at the party wear your logo, and you're going to get in the news, right?
Remember the days you could have more than 5 people at a party?
5.
I remember.
No, you can't have one at the moment.
Can't have one. I knew that.
You can't be at your own party.
So yeah, that's right.
Mate, on that, like you're trying to find it again, and I'm with you. That number, they've done the pursuit of happiness, or worked out. Scientists have worked out what is the number, the average number of money needed to meet that need, and it's not as much as we'd think. It's like 80,000. Yeah, 75 to 80K.
Yeah, 75K. You can
anything more than that.
That's the happiness thing. So they say that up to 75, if you're doing under 75K a year, there can be a level of unhappiness. Right? There's a struggle. A bill arrives and there's some pain around trying to pay it, and things can be tight. Living in 2021, right? But so there's a level of unhappiness. But once you hit kind of 75K, everything's paid for. You can put food on the table. There's no reason then not to be happy. If you choose, right? And then happiness doesn't necessarily increase dramatically once we cross 75. So someone earning 75 can be just as happy as someone earning 150, as someone earning 500, as someone earning 1.5 mil a year. They can be just as happy. So
and sometimes maybe even happier because they got less stress. You got less things that can potentially go wrong, less moving parts, less money going out, less loans. Yes, you don't have as much coming in, but yeah, if you meet all your needs and you've got small disposable income, that means that you can have your novelty, as you were saying, holidays, buy presents for people, all those little extras, then potentially, you're happier than that person with a $1.5 million, lots of overheads. Particularly in this climate, one thing goes wrong and, say you, I don't know, you can't make a payment because something happens. You got a lot of pressure hanging over you. That could be quite stressful versus that person that doesn't have those, extra nice things, I guess.
The tension comes from where you are and where you think you need to be. And in that tension, a meaningless world we put meaning to, you can put a meaning that I'm unhappy because I don't have that. And of course, that's what marketers feed on. That's what's currently, dare we go there? That's what's driving the current narrative that we see out there. I was listening to an interesting clinical psychiatrist the other day talking about why people have. Do we want to go there? Why people are currently.
It's like opening the can and looking at it and going, well, maybe this is next week.
Why people buy a narrative, let's say. Why do people buy into a narrative? And how does the narrative become so mainstream and bought in by everybody? And the clinical psychologist said there's two key factors that need to happen. First of all, people need to be driven by fear. And often it starts as a small fear, a sense of discontent, a sense of unease around what's happening in their world. But secondly, and most importantly, they need to have a lack of connection with purpose. They must be feeling that at some level their world is meaningless. They just don't have. They don't know why they're existing. They no longer have a sense of meaning in their world. We take a lack of meaning and fear. We now have a perfect situation to create a new narrative for these people. And of course, that was the situation, right? We have it globally. We have so many people that have lost connection with meaning. Now, what's their life really about? That's been around for some years now. That sense of ikigai, as the Japanese would say. And then secondly, we throw in some fear. He said the third component is that fear needs to be then fed and fed and fed and fed. And we need to build it until the point reaches where people then must grab onto something. And at that moment, we then give them something to grab hold of. Yep.
Certainty. Because the unknown is so terrifying.
Around something that's causing their fear. Certainty around something that is the enemy. Yeah. And marketers do that. I've got some level of lack of purpose, lack of meaning. I've got some fear, some uncertainty in my world. And then Apple comes along and says, "Hey, we got you, man. Buy the new iPhone 13.
You'll know exactly.
You'll take beautiful pictures. You'll be able to connect with your family online. It'll be, that is the solution." And we buy it, right? We buy that narrative. And currently we have a narrative that's been bought by everyone around COVID-19 and around that there is a pandemic. I'm not saying there's not. That's now shifted. We're no longer having a conversation around COVID-19. That was the bad guy. Now the narrative is around vaccination, of course. We're not going to have that conversation. But there is a whole narrative around vaccination, to the point that I heard yesterday our beautiful Premier, Dr. Dan Andrews, well, he's not doctor, that's right, it's Mr. Dan Andrews, our leader, and I quote, he said, "Make no mistake, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated," in an ABC interview.
Interesting.
Now, I don't know, but I understood leadership wasn't about creating division. So we've gone from COVID's a bad guy to our solution is now it's about vaccination. Now the new evil is the unvaccinated people. Wow. And the key to this guy was saying, the key to keeping a narrative around, to keep it alive, is to build rituals that people can follow. I'm not saying this is not important. Mask wearing, hand sanitizing, social distancing, vaccinating. And he said the more bizarre the ritual can be, the more people will stay in the narrative, in the story. And we've seen that with religions. We've seen that with global leaders in the past that have managed to point a finger at someone or something, said, "Hey, that's the reason that you're in fear. Here's a purpose, grab hold of it, and let's build some rituals around that to reinforce it." And so, we're seeing that right now. Sense of purpose, it's key. Understanding where you are, understanding what's really important, understanding what really makes you happy, not what we're sold is going to make us happy. I think I might have got off tangent then, but
no, that's good.
I think
go for it.
Oh, thanks, mate. I think that it is interesting that a lot of the fear that people have is around, that we all have, is we're so programmed to be able to look into the future and work out where we're going. But if you take that away, take the future away, as Janesh said, when you were young, you were forced into knowing that there might not be a future. We're all looking at that right now going, there may not be a tomorrow. We've all booked a holiday and had to cancel it. So we're starting to not look too far into the future because there's no certainty, and forced to live day at a time. For some people, that's disempowering. There's no meaning there. There's no purpose. And they're being totally fed this fearful narrative all the time. You can see how that might play out. But at the same time, there's an opportunity here to, all these spiritual gurus, all these personal development models, a lot of them are talking about being present, being in the moment. And so we do have people forced into this situation where there's a choice: be in the moment, and there's potentially liberation there, or you're forced into having to live in the moment, wishing you were somewhere else, and that's a huge amount of pain. So it is interesting that the environment is creating a situation where there could be a great opportunity for self-improvement, as far as living in the moment more. What do you think? I mean, as a society, we've always want to be somewhere we're not. As you said, with marketing, the grass is always greener. That's how we sell a product. Be somebody, buy this, But right now, some of that's not going to work. So it does set up this opportunity for people to have a huge level of growth. What do you guys think about that?
I think there's no better time. There's been no better time for us to reflect on our lives and where we want to go. And we always see that every single moment, not just right now, but every single moment. There are people that either drift, they just kind of let go of the reins, they let go of the tiller, and they just let the world take them where it's going to take them. Then there are those that kind of plod, that just, bit of this, bit of that, neither here nor there. And then there's those that decide, that they go, hey, this is how I want to be. This is how I want to behave. This is the character I want to bring to my day. And they're in a way different place. All three, by the way, really their lives aren't much different today.
Physically, yeah. Physically.
But if you project them out a week, there's maybe a difference. If you project them out a month or a year, or in 3 years from now, and when we're 3 years from now, there'll be three kind of people. There's those that drifted, there are those that kind of dabbled, and there's those that decided. And the decided will be in a way different place. They'll be in a way different place financially. They'll be in a way different place with their health. I mean, how many people have we seen that have let their health drift? I've come back from holiday from 8 weeks away, back into the practice and seeing patients in this last week. Mate, the weight that people have put on in the 8 weeks that I've been away, and I'm honest with the patients. I give them a bit of a hug and say, I love you, and that's why I'm going to just be honest with you for a second. Would that be okay? And they go, yeah, sure. Mate, you're getting fat. You're getting fat.
I love it. They pay for that level of honesty.
And they go, oh, no, I know. It's just, I've been able to get out, lockdown, and, I'm bored and,
It's interesting when they go,
I'm miserable.
I can't be able to get out, but you can still go for a walk around the block.
I know.
I was going to say, Benny's not going to let that excuse fly.
There's drift, there's dabble, and then there's decide, right? And so these guys have just drifted. They've just let the world take them, right? So, you can be the one in the drift column, and in a month from now, because we'll still be in lockdown for another month, in a month from now, you can be further drifted, further overweight, further unhealthy, further poor, further disconnected from family, further disconnected from loved ones. Or you could have decided, and you're fitter than you've ever been. You're faster than you've ever been. You're stronger than you've ever been. Your relationships are more powerful than they've ever been. Your bank account's looking better than it's ever looked. That's decide. Right?
And that decision needs to take place. Yeah, you've got to work out what are the areas that you want to make that decision. Because there's multiple areas. There's health, there's relationships, there's mission, there's family, there's partner, there's all these areas of our life. But if we don't identify them first and then work out where we want to take them, how can we how can we influence them in any way? They'll just be influenced however they are by our environment.
Yeah. But I think also people are going to potentially decide in certain areas of their worlds and then drift and plod in the others. Like whatever is probably the most noisiest, not even the most important at the moment. I think we live in a noisy world, and whatever is the most noisiest, they're going to potentially decide on. And all the ones that are probably more important than the noisy ones, they'll probably drift or plot and go, I probably should decide on this now, as you said, and then Benny, and then go, in 3 years' time, if I decide on this now, it's gonna be better, right? But they're not, because it's not noisy, it's not important, because it's this, potential pause, this mandated pause, right? But it doesn't have to be a pause. You can decide, right? I think the drifters are subconsciously deciding not to make a decision. Right? If you're
not making a decision is a decision.
Yeah. But either way, you're deciding.
People are paralysed. When people are so paralysed, they're not paused, they're paralysed at the moment.
So,
overwhelmed.
Question with the paralysed, and going back to when we said what is enough, right? And we know people who have taken a role or started a business and they've gone, you know what, I'm going to do this for X amount of time, make bank, and then get out. But when they go in, at times, if they're not diligent enough, they've built this lifestyle that is funded by this by making bank. So, but then whatever they're doing doesn't bring them joy. They're not happy anymore. And I know I've asked a few clients and a few friends, I've gone, why don't you do something else? They're like, because I can't. I've got this like epic mansion that I need to fund. I need to pay the mortgage. I've got these cars. I've got kids in these schools. They've built this lifestyle around this thing that, and they're like, I just want to simplify, but I can't. It's that enough. And it's interesting what we're seeing now with our country and our state in terms of what is enough, and the goalposts change. But I think it's the same as that lifestyle. Your goalposts change. Your business does better. You get a promotion. Oh, great. We can buy a bigger house. We're gonna do that, Reno. But then it's like there's no that enough. That line of enough is bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So there is no. You can't exit. You can't change because you're bound by a lifestyle that, again, you're like, I just can't. I can't make a change because I've got all these commitments, which is really interesting. And this is that fear of not making those commitments, and that's when that enough. It's like it's just turns into keeping up with the Joneses.
I feel like that's another point of what Benny was saying, that there's a decision there, but the decision is to live a life that isn't authentic to you. Maybe we haven't asked ourselves, what do I actually want? That sounds like the narrative, fortune, fame, bigger house, bigger cars. That if that's not, for some people, that's their story. They want to produce a huge amount of financial wealth. They want to have, but some of us don't want that, but we move towards it because we've been conditioned to think that's what we want. But if you don't spend enough time to actually say, no, what do I want? What does Matt want? Then you can't create your own story. You create someone else's. Get to a point where you have all those things, but you don't feel the way you thought you would feel. And that's debilitating. Like, you've carved out this life and now you have all these commitments and these bills you've got to pay. Identity's tied up in that. I'm the successful, affluent person. That sounds like a trap to me, a cage.
Mm-hmm. I think, a lot of people don't want to look. A lot of people don't want to. They don't want to. They don't want to have that conversation in their head about what do they really want, and so they do what they should do, not what they really, really want to do. And of course, that's all just part of the narrative. Like you and I. Well, I say you and I, maybe not you guys because I'm old, but I grew up in a house in a I think it was 2, maybe 3-bedroom home. There's 4 of us, mum and dad and the 2 boys. 1 bathroom, and we were super happy. My house has got 5 bathrooms.
How many kids do you have?
3.
That makes sense. You each get one each. It's
Pretty much, right?
Do you use all 5?
You know, like
Still? Do you still
Sorry?
do you use all 5?
one that tends not to get used, right?
Yeah.
so we need to sneak around in the morning and put out of order on 4.
Yeah, out of order.
Just watch what happens.
But you know what it's like? We're just bored. You know, mate, you can't be happy with 1. 2, you could get by with, but real happiness is 3 bathrooms.
Dr.
If
Steve
you want to be
has
super
5
happy,
bathrooms.
go 4 bathrooms. You know, like it's just a narrative that we're bought into. And
That's 5 bathrooms you've got to clean, mate. I've got 1 and I hate cleaning it, getting the toothbrush into the grout. Oh, you've got kids though.
I got a cleaner.
You got a cleaner.
So, because you got to have a cleaner.
You sounds like you need 2, mate.
It's 1 for each bathroom.
Yeah. So, you know, like, but then you go away on a holiday, right? And you stay in a cabin somewhere. It's 1 bathroom and maybe 2 bedrooms. One's got, you know, a set of bunks in it. The other one's got the main room, and there's only 1 bathroom, 1 little kitchen that kind of feeds out to the same living room, and you have such a great time. Do you know? Like, we just buy into these stories.
But is it the contrast though? Like, say if you lived in that all the time, you go, you know what? I want to go stay in a 5 bathroom place, right? And you go, oh, this is epic. But I think the contrast. Without the contrast, you don't go necessarily holiday in your home city necessarily, right? You go somewhere else because it's contrast. And then if you were living regional or say in a jungle all the time, you go, oh, you know what? I want to go to the big city. I want to see some tall buildings, right? Like I think contrast is I think part of that. But it's interesting enough. Like now, people can't unless you decide. Contrast is really hard to find right now in the current climate, right? Really hard to find contrast that brings happiness, that sparks creativity, that sparks new thinking, gives that sense of just relax and be able to switch off. It's because
just on that, I agree with you. I think it is difficult because we're looking for things that aren't necessarily there. We got to change the way we look. Like, for example, I've been trying to leave Warrandyte my whole life. I've always been trying to leave this place. And for me, traveling the world was about finding the best place in the world, and then I'm going to live there. And then I've met my partner who's moved. She's been traveling the world, also searching for the place, and she lives in Warrandyte, and she's found it. And I meet her and she's telling me the best place in the world is Warrandyte. And I'm scratching my head going, really? I've been trying to get out of this place for the last 15 years. And because I'm forced to be here, I've got someone who's really excited about it. I'm reliving Warrandyte and I'm realizing it's all changing. You know, the way that you look at things really affects them. Suddenly I'm like, oh my God, this is a beautiful place. Now I'm noticing all these, since 10K's opened up, mate, it is so busy here. Everyone wants to come to Warrandyte. I'm like, has it always been like this? And I've missed it. Like, it is actually really beautiful. But I think that for me, the narrative was, you know, I'm pretty minimalistic, but the travel, the glory to be, you know, seeked outside, and it was all about adventure and needing to leave. I'm starting to realize that adventure can exist just down the road, and that just by how you look at things, they change. This is a really, really beautiful place.
It goes back.
I think that's where this time right now, no better time for us to kind of make some new meanings. There's no better time for us to decide on how we want to feel about the world, or not.
Right. I think it's just choose. I think it's that time of that reflection. When people go, I think Matt and you and I spoke about it ages ago in an episode on pandemic mindset. On like, you can choose how you use this time, right? You can, or if you don't choose, you're not deciding. So it's still a choice. But it's, as you said, Ben, it goes into that drifting category, right? It's like you can choose to build that business, to start that hobby, to be fit, to look after your health, because you know what, I can actually stand at my desk today, or I'm going to move my computer to the to the kitchen counter so I can stand most of the day. Like you can make these decisions, or you can just go through and don't go for a walk, put on weight, be unhappy, just watch a bunch of TV, news, Netflix, and wait. And
they're all decisions too. I think that's what we're getting at, that they're the decisions, but you can make different decisions. But isn't it true that the brain always tries to prevent you from changing? So if I haven't been working out, my brain goes, oh, what's the point? You've got to work out for years to get fit, So we make it so big that it's so hard to get going. But really, you build a body one session at a time. You just got to do 10 minutes. It's the same with the business. I'm putting my neck out here, but you put in, an hour here, an hour there, and in a month's time, you've got it. It's just those little tiny steps, but our head's not going to help us because we resist change. We're in a pattern of comfort. Maybe it's going to be quite hard initially, but once you get momentum, it does get easier. Hey,
but it's also that it's harder now because there's a larger narrative, as you were saying, Benny. There's a larger narrative that's easier, right? We're wired to go down the path of least resistance, right? And to follow a narrative that has like said rituals is easier. So to decide is harder. To change is harder. Like, not saying to go, this is my disclaimer, not saying to break any restrictions, but you can also go, hey, this time, I've got this time, but what do I do with it? Is it just doom and gloom, or do I really buy into this narrative, or am I just aware of the narrative? I'm aware of what's going on, and then make my own choice within the best ability, right? So yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of people are unfortunately, I would say in Australia. When I say in Australia, I think Victoria, New South Wales, in that drifter and plod category, I think.
Waiting for it to change. But we can, it's Ben's biggest fear when he jumped out of the tree was he realised that he can't change and control everything. But we can control us and how we respond. That's where our power is. And remembering that sometimes and reminding each other of that is powerful. You can create some positive change, but it won't necessarily be easy. There's that quote, I remember it was in that past episode where we talked about doing what is hard and your life will be easy. Do what's easy and your life will be hard. And I find that guides a lot of my decisions, that there's an easy way and there's a hard way. And often if you're willing to put in the effort for the challenge to meet it, then there's a level of ease that comes from that. It works for the body. It works for the business. It works for everything. It's not easy to work out an hour every day. It's much easier to sit on the couch. But when I do it, do I feel epic afterwards? Do I feel strong? Do I feel really huge self-belief? Yes. And does it get easier? Yes.
So I wonder if someone's listening to this, I wonder if we could pose them a good question to kind of think about as we kind of wrap the episode up, what is it you could do today to decide? What decision do you need to make today? Not necessarily a big one, but like as Janesh was saying, what's a little decision that you could make today? How could you move away from being a drifter or a dabbler to a decision maker? How could you turn naughty Benny? Screw it. How could you turn the pandemic of the unvaccinated into a positive thing? How could this be, like, how could you reflect on this in 2 or 3 years' time and go, wow, thank God for that, because it was during that I decided. And like you say, it's a little decide, right? So, if you're heading in this direction and you just shift by that much, and we project that shift over weeks or months or years, you're in a totally different place because of that tiny shift. I wonder what that tiny shift is for the people that are listening to this.
And I think that's a good point. Go for tiny. Promise yourself 5 minutes at the gym. If you haven't been going to the gym and you think that you're going for an hour, 4 days a week, you're not. just 5 minutes once. And then next week, 5 minutes twice. And then the week after, 10 minutes, like really easy wins to make
more sustainable
that
too.
change. Because if you do it, you feel good about doing it. And that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you make it too hard to get the win, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy the other way. See, we want to build momentum. So what is one thing you could do today that might set you up for tomorrow?
So, fellas, I'm going to put you both on the spot here. The same question that we just asked our listeners. What's one thing today that you will do? And when this airs, you can comment on it because it will air after today, and you can air if you actually did decide. So what's one thing today that you're going to decide on?
I'll go first. I've had some challenges. I need to really sort out internet. So I'm doing everything possible. I will have fully functioning, higher quality internet than you, Janesh.
Great.
By the next episode. And I will, it's the thing that needs to change because there's a lot of pain here and not a lot of understanding. People are like, dude, we're in the 21st century, you can't get internet? I'm like, yes. So I'm going to do everything possible to make that happen. Starting in 5 minutes, I'm calling NBN.
Listeners, if you're going to write into Matty and suggest that he maybe even just try using data on his phone for 4G, don't waste your time because we've already had that conversation with him.
If you can all please put a list of comments in the comment section of useful tips, that would be really helpful. Like, yes, turning on your mobile phone 4G, roaming, things like that are really helpful right now.
And you might need to put instructions in.
Step by step.
Your phone,
pictures.
Turn it on.
Pictures.
Maybe even send them a little video on how to do it.
What's one thing you're going to change, Dinesh or Benny?
You go first, Dinesh.
No, you go, Ben. You go.
It's good. It's a quality question, right? Because it actually it sends you looking for where am I not being my best right now? Where could I make a decision that would make me better? And it's important that we kind of recognise that because we're always doing great, but are we doing our best, right? So where could we do better? Where could there be an improvement? And I think for me, and I started to feel it yesterday, was creating the space, the time to just sit, and do some reading, and that it doesn't have to be just back to back to back to back to back. That putting some space into my calendar where there's just some space. So I've got a couple of beautiful chairs sitting. I sit over there. It's where I sit in my morning to do my meditations, and that's it. Then I get off that chair and I pretty much don't sit and relax again at some level for the rest of the day. And yesterday I just looked at my calendar and I had a gap. It was actually before you and I caught up yesterday, Janesh, and I thought, I'm just going to go over there with a cup of tea and just sit and read, and not read something that's about building more and doing more. And, I was just reading, in fact, I was reading a bit of Eckhart Tolle stuff. And I'm going to, yeah, I know. And in fact, let me read you.
Is it The Power of Now? Which one are you reading?
Have you got pants on, Ben?
Highly recommended for our listeners. Stillness Speaks.
Nice.
A good mate of mine, Rhino, sent me this, and it's just little simple. Like you could pick the book up and read any bit of it any time. But this came to me this morning, and it's probably relevant to what we talked about. True freedom and the end of suffering is living in such a way as if you had completely chosen whatever you feel or experience at this moment.
Contentment.
Because suffering comes from us going, I didn't really want to be on this thing with you guys today. I really wanted to be doing something else. And it's, but he's saying, just recognize that you actually chose this moment and this is perfect for you right now. Well, there's no tension then, is there?
how often are we doing something, thinking about doing something else, or wishing we were somewhere else? I think that's what I was getting at with Warrandyte. A huge amount of my pain was I want to be in Indo, but I'm stuck in Warrandyte. It didn't make sense. It took Kat to remind me, you're here now, be here now and enjoy it. And once you do that, it changes. Yeah.
And recognising that you are there in Warrandyte, where you are right now, because you chose it. Oh, but I didn't. No, you chose it. You're there because it was chosen.
Yeah, it's true. The ego will say, no, I didn't, Benny. I'm forced here. I have to be here. I'm not allowed to leave my house, but I could have moved my house. I could be in Queensland and stuck in Queensland. Yes, there's a level of being stuck 5Ks, 10Ks from your house, but you are right. I chose it. So I might as well fucking enjoy it. And once you decide to enjoy it, you'll enjoy it because there's so much awesome stuff wherever we are.
What about you, Janesh? Before we wrap, mate, it's 9 o'clock.
Look at the timing. Mate, we've got better since you joined, Benny.
Good kind.
The decision.
Try.
I would say
Tighter tops?
oh no. That's already been decided, right? Like it's, I'm talking about a new decision.
2 sizes less. That was the decision last week, mate. Great decision.
I think so. I'm going to go this week. Decide. I think that is what you said, Ben. I think being that aware, deciding to be happy with where you are. Right, I think so. We're going away this weekend, and at times there's a bit of like, "Hey, what are we doing?" Like, "Oh my god, I want to go for a run. I want to do this," or it's like, "Yeah, fuck, I don't really want to do that." Like, sure, really? What do we do this? And I'm like, ah. So I think just really just deciding like that is good, right? And exploring and deciding to explore. Like, we're fortunate enough we're in regional. We can head away and just. And B, I think it's not the I wish we were doing this. It's like, no, just be. And I think that would be my decision to decide that whatever happens, whatever
enough.
Is enough. And it's not even enough. It's great.
You're not a human doing, Janesh. You're a human being.
I like that one.
A little bit of being for you.
There's a sticker on the bumper of a car. If ever I've seen one.
Right?
It's definitely from a book. I can't claim it.
Human being. I'm going to say Matthew Ind, Mr. Ind quote.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Hey, that's a great place for us to wrap, I reckon. So again, listener at home, watcher at home, what's the thing? What's the decision you're going to make this week to make you, your relationship, your health, your finances better? We'll leave that with you.
Yeah. Have a good one, everyone.
Cheers, lads. Absolute pleasure. See you later.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Lifelong Learner. If you like this episode and want to know more and hear other episodes, head over to lifelonglearnerpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, where you'll be the first to know when new podcast episodes come out. And if you want to say hello, tell us a joke, or ask us a question, send us an email at hello@lifelonglearnerpodcast.com. Thanks again.